Welcome to our writing workshop from ROC DSA's ROC DSA's Communications Committee. So the point of this writing workshop is to help people get over their fear of writing, to give them some mechanics of the writing process, to talk a bit about socialist writing, and hopefully encourage people to write some pieces and submit them to the Rochester Red Star. Um, so, uh, so I understand some sources of fear from writing might be, memories of grade school essay exams that you've taken. Maybe you worry that you have nothing new to say or to add to the conversation. We will address that second part. The first one, resolving childhood trauma, you're going to have to work through with your therapist. But um, an introduction for myself. My name is Greg, he, him. My writing experience has been mostly through school. I was a research assistant while I was attending the University of Buffalo. I am a public defender, so I do a lot of writing in my day job. But I want to emphasize that a lot of the writing that we're talking about today does not necessarily come from that background. A lot of the writing that I've done for Red Star is writing that I've developed through experience. And I don't think that you need to have an academic background in order to contribute strong socialist writing. In addition, I read a lot. That's certainly going to help with your writing. I do want to give a shout out here to the Political Education Committee's library, which should have a home soon at our new office. So reach out. We can give you a link to check out the selection and get some books to you. Okay, now why write? So again, we're addressing this from a perspective primarily of socialist writing. We want to push back on capitalist propaganda. It's the fish and water scenario where we are living and breathing capitalism every day, and that develops a false consciousness where we start to sympathize with some of the arguments of capitalism, this worship of free trade and competition and individualism. We're writing to raise working class consciousness. We want to provide new tools for analyzing the world, and we want to develop our own thoughts and ability to do that by skillfully articulating our arguments and critiques. When we write, it forces us to lay out and defend our arguments, providing reason and evidence, and it compels us to reflect and aids in drawing lessons. As socialists, we have a belief that we are able to govern, that common people can and should govern the world. And to quote the Marxist Unity Group's bulletin, if every cook can govern, then every cook must write. The Marxist Unity Group is a DSA caucus. Now, regarding sharing your perspective, I believe that each person has a unique and valuable experience to share. We are all affected by capitalism in a multitude of often horrifying and traumatizing ways. And I think that, again, by sharing these varying perspectives, we can see the various ways that capitalism affects us, and help to raise that class consciousness that we spoke of as a goal. There's a quote from the Italian Marxist Antonio Gramsci. He said that all men are intellectuals. Each carries on some form of intellectual activity, participates in a particular conception of the world, has a conscious line of moral conduct and therefore contributes to sustain a conception of the world or to modify it, that is, to bring into being new modes of thought. I think that's an empowering quote that again underlines this idea that we each do have something to contribute, and that by contributing, by interacting with these ideas and with different people, we do have an effect on the world. So, socialist writing. There's a couple aspects of socialist writing that are important to keep in mind, and you'll encounter these ideas, especially if you are reading Marxist theory. We'll start with materialism first. So materialism is this idea, and you might have heard of historical materialism, for example. It's the idea that history is shaped by material forces, resources that people have, new inventions, the different capabilities that those give us. This would be in opposition to an ideological determination that people just have some spark of new idea, and that is how the world changes and how things develop. A materialist would argue that ideology is created and reinforced by its material basis. So we do always want to think about what people's material interests are, and how that shapes and influences their actions. Dialectics is a fairly complex idea to describe. I've included in the article for this month's Red Star a link to some further reading on the subject. I'll describe it here as how subjects reinforce and reshape one another. Things don't just happen from a simple kind of cause and effect. Those effects also reflect back on those causes, and there's this constance of change and new formations that occur because of these dialectical relationships. Praxis. Praxis gives us this idea of putting theory into action, right? And as Marx famously said, we are here writing to change the world rather than to merely interpret it. And as far as working class relevance, another Marx quote here is that accessibility to the working class, said Marx, is a consideration which to me outweighs everything else. We do want to make sure that our writing is accessible to the working class. And I don't think that always means dumbing things down. I think that we do have to believe that the working class can grasp these ideas, but we always want to make sure that we are bringing it back down to that everyday experience and not just talking about things in a esoteric kind of manner. The Marxist intellectual and writer Vijay Prashad, who has taught a series of socialist writing workshops, says that good socialist nonfiction writing does not assume that it emerges from the genius of the writer or an inspiration, but it comes from being absorbed by the common sense around us and by being honest about elaborating it into philosophy of good sense. And we want our writing to be radical. According to Marx, to be radical is to grasp things by their root. We are really trying to examine the base foundation for why the world is the way it is now, and that's the only way that we're going to change it, is by grasping things by their root instead of mere aesthetic changes, right, that might happen so often under liberalism. All right, now we'll get into the mechanics of writing. So first, selecting a topic. Think about why you're writing and what you want to accomplish. Do you want to tell a story, make an argument, explain a topic, compare two topics, or interpret a piece of art or literature? And we'll address as well offering a new perspective. I think that this is a sticking point for many writers. There's a lot out there. It seems like everything has been done before. So we'll talk in just a moment about overcoming that feeling of not being able to offer a new perspective. Again, we did just highlight that I believe that everybody does have a unique perspective to offer based on their own set of unique experiences. But we do have some further considerations. Okay, so here are some various formats. This is not all that exists. We have comparative, where you're comparing two topics. Critical, where you might be interpreting a piece of literature or art. Expository, where we're explaining a topic. Argumentative, where we're trying to persuade. Or a narrative, where we tell a story. I think it's important, these are worth keeping in mind, but you shouldn't feel that you're stuck to just one category. You want to use a format that is going to work best to accomplish the goal that you are setting out when you write. Okay, offering a unique perspective. So I have these diagrams here. I think there are some various approaches to offering a new perspective. I mean, certainly just writing something from your own personal experience is going to be a new perspective by default, or it will at least be your own perspective. But maybe if we're writing about some more common topics, here are a couple ways to think about it. On the left are two interlapping circles. And I think here we can think about the unique overlap between two subjects. And we do have Logan here. Let's see. So I'm pulling up, this is an article that was written by Logan, actually, and the title is "The Gilded Age Bone Wars Have Their Echoes in Today's Vaccine Patent Waiver Fight." And I think that this is a very good illustration. I encourage everybody to go back and read this article. But Logan takes you can see just from the title here, these Gilded Age Bone Wars, and something in our own time, this contemporary fight over vaccine patents, and looks at the interlap between those things and draws some lessons from them. The circle on the right is just kind of circles within circles. So I don't have an article for this one. I can use as an example, though, an article that I was writing in one of my UB courses. I wanted to write about the suffragist movement. So that's the outer circle, right? The suffragist movement. And then maybe we take a step in and think about, okay, what are the different organizations that made up the suffrage movement? So the organization I chose to look at was the Congressional Union for Women's Suffrage. And even that is its own big topic. So we could even take another step in and look at a specific campaign, for example, during the 1914 and 1916 elections. the Congressional Union for Women's Suffrage proposed boycotting the Democratic Party because they felt like they didn't give suffrage enough support. But you can just see how we're kind of going in layers here. We could even take another step. They had a publication called The Suffragist, and we could look at how did the suffragist cover this specific set of events. So by drilling in, we're finding a more niche topic that maybe somebody hasn't written about, or at least has not written about in a particular manner. And it's much easier to focus in, if you're writing about one grand huge topic, it's, where do you start? You might as well write a book. Okay. So I put together an example here for the workshop portion of our course. I chose this first kind of interlapping subject, social reproduction and the exploitation of women under capitalism. So I took a broader Marxist concept that he really doesn't develop too much in his writings, and then I'm looking at the real world impact on women, and how does the theory overlap with these real world effects that we see. So once you have a topic in mind, you want to brainstorm. So I think brainstorming could just take the point of, or take the format of bullet points. So you could just take a few minutes to add bullet points that you might know about a subject. Alternately, you might want to just start writing. There's nothing wrong with, if you are feeling inspired with just jotting down your ideas and seeing what comes out. And so I wanted to take a moment to practice that brainstorming here. Let's just take a couple minutes and see, what would somebody put as a bullet point for social reproduction and the exploitation of women under capitalism? Yes, we had uncompensated labor, emotional labor, perhaps child rearing or birth. I think something that we see a lot now are, in our modern times, this push of women in the workplace, women as CEOs. Some of these things might be relevant. It's okay to go broad. We're going to take this in just a moment and pare it down. But just whatever comes out during that brainstorming process, just to get you started and thinking about the topic. So I do want to encourage everybody, if you do have a topic in mind, I was hoping people could come here starting to think about a topic that they might want to write about. Hope maybe some people have come with some topics in mind. I'm just going to give 2 minutes. You could brainstorm your topic here to get a start. So give people the potential to leave this workshop with a piece that they might be ready to share. So 2 minutes to brainstorm. Okay. So hopefully during your brainstorm, you're able to jot down some ideas and get started with writing your topic. When you're brainstorming, just write things in any order that they come to you. And again, maybe instead of bullet points, you just want to start writing. But I think that regardless of what approach you choose to do your brainstorming, then we need to take a step back and create an outline. It's important that we present our information in a logical manner, right? We want paragraphs to build upon each other. We want to group common themes together. Arguments should proceed in a reasoned manner, right? We could think of a syllogism here, for example. All men are mortal. Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. And I don't think that we need to be too strict about, this form of logical reasoning. Certainly you should be making valid arguments. But again, I think that this gives us a way to think about how our arguments or presentation should proceed, to try and think about where some of the gaps in our arguments would be. So we might want to take that syllogism and break it down. We could provide reasoning and evidence for each of those, right? All men are mortal. We could certainly provide reasoning and evidence for that. Socrates is a man, right? Therefore, Socrates is mortal. We could back up our conclusion. So maybe if that were our essay, each of those would be a paragraph that we could fill out with these things that we've brainstormed. So here are some various ways to think about how that presentation looks. So if we have a comparative essay, maybe we're going to present and describe one topic, and then we'll present and describe another topic, and then we'll have another paragraph talking about how they relate, drawing some lessons from this comparison. If we have a critical essay interpreting literature and art, we might provide a summary of some sort of the literature or art that we are interpreting. We'll present some key themes that come out of that, and then we might take agreement or disagreement in various forms. If it's an expository essay explaining a topic, we want to clearly state our topic and why it matters, and provide details, right? Just explain your topic, and then finish with this summary. Argumentative essays, we're trying to persuade. We want to, again, clearly present our argument, and then we're going to back it up with evidence and reasoning. This is probably, where you'll most see that kind of syllogism approach. So we might have different arguments that we are presenting. Good rule of thumb is to present stronger arguments first, group similar themes together when you're doing that. And we want to highlight the importance of why we are making this argument. And if you're doing a narration, if you're telling a story, be creative. I think there are no rules. So again, it should be coherent, but encourage creativity in that situation. So going here to back to the topic that I chose for the workshop today, social reproduction and the exploitation of women under capitalism. Here's the outline I put together. I want an introduction. One thing I think it's important to mention now is it's okay to write the introduction last. There are some different purposes that an introduction could serve. So an introduction might draw the reader's attention. It might present key themes. It might lay out a roadmap for the following paragraphs of the essay. But I think that it's okay to write the introduction last once you have a better idea of what the essay is going to look like. So since I'm kind of integrating these two topics here. So my first topic is social reproduction. What is social reproduction? I'm going to present this theory and explain this theory, define it as it's presented by Marx. And then the other half of this topic are its effects on women. So so the next part of my outline, I'm going to elaborate on that, right? And then I want to think about, we're always trying, again, we want to make sure that we're drawing lessons out of this. The next part of my essay might be liberation beyond capitalism. And conclusion here, I wrote praxis. I think a similar idea again, why does this matter? What is this theory that we're taking here? How do we put that into some real world terms? I did just want to show you an example here. I wrote an essay on the materials for this writing workshop. This is what my outline looked like. I often use the bullet point feature in Word. There is even an outline feature in Word that's pretty useful. So I want to encourage you, again, hopefully people came here with some ideas of what they might want to start writing. We just took 2 minutes to brainstorm. Put some of the things that you brainstormed into your outline. I'll take a step back and go into, so we brought up uncompensated labor, right? That's certainly an effect on women, emotional labor, and an effect on women, right? The child rearing, social reproduction itself. Marx focuses a lot on that, giving birth to new workers, the formation of new workers for our workforce, for our capitalist society. So maybe that part would go in the definition paragraph that we have there. I brought up the example of women as CEOs. Maybe that would go in liberation beyond capitalism. That's a form of liberation that capitalism might give us. And we want to differentiate that with forms of liberation under socialism. So we'll take another 2 minutes here, take some of the things from your brainstorm and try and put it into an outline. See how this information would fit together. I'll go back to this slide so you can think about some standard forms. And again, don't feel like you're stuck with just these options. Use a form that is most effective for the goal that you want to accomplish. Okay. So we've started organizing some of our ideas into an outline. Now we want to research, right? If you know nothing about your topic, you might need to start with this step. But again, I think you probably have know something about your topic, right? Otherwise, why would you select it as a topic? I think you're often coming knowing something. It's always good to see what you know first through that brainstorming process. But then we're going to turn to research here to fill in the gaps and back up our assertions. So as far as filling in the gaps, right, when we were looking at our outline here, maybe there are certain things that we don't know. Maybe we don't really know enough about a good definition of social reproduction. Maybe we need to look at some additional definitions of social reproduction to be able to effectively explain it for our reader. Backing up assertions, that's more like finding evidence, facts and evidence to substantiate your arguments. So I pulled a couple quotes here, again, for my social reproduction essay. Quote, "The activities often performed by women outside the official economy that sustain the human beings who constitute labor." It's from Nancy Fraser. And I have a quote, quote, "Women will only become free and equal in a world where labor has been socialized and where communism has been victorious." That's from the Russian feminist theorist Alexandra Kollontai. And then I've plugged these into my outline here. So I put the Fraser quote into what is social reproduction. Fraser is giving us a definition of social reproduction. And Kollontai is giving us an idea of what it takes to escape from these oppressive forms of social reproduction that are expected under capitalism. Can take a moment to review the quotes. So do that again, just another 2 minutes. Find, use your phone, use your internet browser, see if you can find a quote or two, a fact, something that has to do with your subject. Pull it up and find a spot that it fits in your outline. So I know 2 minutes really isn't long enough to do any substantial research, but perhaps you were able to find a quote or something along those lines, or a factual piece. Think about where that should go in your outline. There's certainly a lot more to research. We could have our own workshop just on research, so we're not going to go too far into that right now. The one thing that I do want to emphasize is the use of reliable sources and the need for citation. Don't just pull something that you've seen off Twitter and stick it in your essay without doing any fact checking on it. And if you're quoting somebody, if you're pulling a fact somewhere, make sure you reference where you're getting it from. When we want to substantiate our arguments, and if we're citing where we're getting this information from, other people can follow it up, and that will help to substantiate our arguments. We're not just pulling it out of the air. Okay, so we've brainstormed, we've created an outline, we've done a bit of research to fill in our outline and back up our arguments. Now we're ready to draft. I think drafting, it's good to just write. Don't get stuck up on words. This is something I'll admit that I still have trouble with, is editing while I'm writing. Save the editing for later. You'll have plenty of time to edit. It's important to just let these ideas flow. A good way to think of this is to write like you talk. How would you explain your topic to a friend? If you get stuck, you can return to the outline and focus on one topic at a time. Sometimes you might get a bit overwhelmed trying to think of your whole essay at once. Just break it down. Focus on writing one paragraph or responding to one piece at a time. Drafting doesn't have to occur in any necessary order. If you're stuck, if we went back to our social reproduction outline, if you were stuck on providing a good definition of social reproduction, but you felt comfortable talking about some of the ways that women are affected under capitalism by these expectations of birth and child rearing and domestic labor, you could focus on that first and return to the definition that you're going to have earlier on. That's okay. We already mentioned with the introduction, for example, that it's good to write the introduction last. That way you have a better idea of how you want to use this introduction. So let's just take 2 minutes. Obviously you're not going to be able to write a whole draft in 2 minutes, but just try writing for 2 minutes on your topic without stopping. Just get the ideas on paper, get into that habit of that writing flow. So I just want to show how I've continued filling out this social reproduction piece. The introduction here, I chose to use an example that would draw the reader's attention, kind of maybe a semi-humorous contemporary example. In the show Malcolm in the Middle, character Lois Wilkerson is the mother of 5 boys and wife to Hal, a lower-level white-collar worker. Lois is frequently seen cleaning the household, preparing meals, and disciplining the children. Despite these responsibilities, Lois also has her own job as a pharmacy cashier. Next, the next part in my outline was defining what is social reproduction. Capitalism relies on a steady supply of labor to continue generating value. It requires the social reproduction of labor, which feminist critical theorist Nancy Fraser describes as the activities often performed by women outside the official economy that sustain the human beings who constitute labor. This includes birth, childcare, education, cooking, cleaning, and emotional labor. All of these activities are required to ensure workers are available to labor for their employer. The next part of my outline, I wanted to talk a bit more about the effects on women of social reproduction. Women are largely left responsible for the work of social reproduction. After women give birth, they are left primarily responsible for raising the child, in addition to household upkeep. This work is not compensated. Under capitalism, the work of women is deemed less valuable than that of men. Women are not expected to have dreams and desires beyond marriage. This ideology of capitalism functions to ensure women remain destined to continue providing the next generation of workers. The next part of my outline, bourgeois feminism provides a limited version of liberation for women. They're invited to participate in the economy as workers and potential bosses, offering individual opportunities to rise to the top. Such structures continue to leave the mass of workers behind. According to Russian revolutionary Alexandra Kollontai, quote, women will only become free and equal in a world where labor has been socialized and where communism has been victorious, end quote. What Kollontai describes is a collective responsibility for raising the next generation. And in conclusion, praxis, again, thinking about how we are taking this theory and suggesting some sort of action, some way for our readers to act upon this. We must be critical of bourgeois claims to feminism that tell women they are more free if they can sit in the boss's chair or select from a wider range of commodities. Too often, the halls of power are barred to those who are not already primed to do the bidding of the patriarchal ruling class. We cannot guarantee that representationalism will deliver liberation. Instead, we need to constitute human relationships by taking increasing responsibility for one another and ensuring that we aim to meet human needs rather than those of capital. So again, this is kind of a draft here. This is not a finished essay. We could have some possible criticisms about how I might have broken some things up. The idea here is to see how that brainstorm went into an outline and how we then filled out that outline in our drafting process. Once we have a draft, now we're going to go to editing. There's a couple things that I think we can think of themes that we want to think about while we are editing. Proper grammar ensures the piece is legible without distracting spelling errors or poor word usage. Flow ensures the piece is interesting. We want people to read it. They're not going to read it if it's boring or if it jumps all over the place. And some of the following slides will break some of this down with some additional ideas. Comprehension ensures that the piece is understandable. So thinking about flow, one thing to think about here is paragraph order, right? Maybe we don't like the outline that we started with. Maybe after we start drafting, we think, oh, whatever we thought should be second or third in our outline should have been first. It's really easy in a word processor to cut and paste. We can easily cut and paste, rearrange our paragraphs, and just see how things fit together, see how they sound maybe in a different order, if the ideas flow better in a different order or make more sense. We can do the same thing on a sentence level within the paragraph. I do think that the first sentence of the paragraph should clearly key the reader into what that paragraph is going to be about. But again, try playing with different orders. And I think through just kind of playing with your writing after you've drafted it, you'll unlock some ideas. You'll encounter some alternate presentations of the material that you might find work better than how you initially wrote it when you were just kind of writing, doing your drafting, letting things just flow out from the pen to the paper. Even within the sentence, we can arrange sentences within the sentence to help with this flow and comprehension. So playing with where a quote is, for example, I have here, as Marx said, quote, or maybe you put the first part of a quote, said Marx, and then the second part of a quote, Or you could just put the quote, said Marx. Again, it's what we want is flow. So maybe going from one idea right into a quote is too disjointing, or we need to cue the reader in, as Marx said, we're going into this quote. These things help with flow. Make sure that your reader doesn't have to stop and assess what you're trying to do. Comprehension. We want to make sure that difficult words and key concepts are explained with definitions and examples. So here I just wrote a paragraph. Obviously, the word here is exchange value. Now, your reader might not know what exchange value is. Again, thinking about our goals of socialist writing, right? The accessibility to the working class is important, and if we're using just dense theoretical jargon or academic language, we're not going to achieve that goal. So here we added some explanation to define what exchange value is. Commodities are produced for their exchange value without real regard to their effect on society. Exchange value describes the quantifiable worth of an item as compared to its qualitative use value. Soda, for example, is neither necessary nor healthy, yet it is mass marketed and produced because of the strong financial incentive to continue doing so. I will say, I think another benefit that you get from explaining is it helps create, it helps increase the length of your piece, right? If we just had, commodities are produced for their exchange value without real regard to their effect on society. Okay, we've got one sentence here. We filled that out into a whole paragraph just by elaborating on that point and making sure that that concept is clear to our reader. Transition sentences, thinking about flow. These might be sentences at the end of one paragraph or the beginning of another paragraph that key the reader into where you're going, so that it doesn't just look like, again, I said when we're putting together an outline, we might just want to address one part of the outline at a time. But we don't want the reader to just feel like we're going from A to B to C, without any logical progression of how did we get from A to B. So here I took my introductory paragraph that I drafted for the social reproduction essay and added a sentence so we could key the reader into where we're going. Why are we talking about Malcolm in the middle here? So this was the last sentence that I had initially written. Despite these responsibilities, Lois also has her own job as a pharmacy cashier. And then a transition sentence. These corresponding demands are explained by the pressures of capitalism. Okay, how? Now I'm going into the next paragraph to explain that. Capitalism relies on a steady supply of labor to continue generating value. So by adding this sentence, we've keyed the reader into where our argument is going to proceed. We want to do a similar thing with signposts. Things such as first, second, third, maybe the word then, maybe, and then finally, right? These are things that are signposts for the reader that show the reader that you're going into a different topic. Maybe if we just had, illustrated by the text in green here, right? If we didn't have this first, second, third, maybe it would confuse the reader. Where does the green turn into orange, right? Are they still talking about the same topic? Where's the break here? By providing these signposts, we have a clear break between ideas, letting the reader know, okay, now we're moving on to another idea that we're going to explore. Repetition. Let's avoid repetition. There are stylistic reasons to have repetition, right? We might want to emphasize things, but if every sentence begins with, and then this happened, And then it's going to get really boring. It's not going to flow. It's not going to be interesting for your readers. So we do want to avoid repetition. One way to do that might be through the use of a thesaurus here. So the word cool, right? There's better words that we could use, maybe stylish, chic, fashionable. So and there might be words that aren't just replacing a word one for one, but might better illustrate the point that you're trying to get across. I do want to warn not to overuse a thesaurus. Okay, so hopefully that was a humorous illustration of the overuse of a thesaurus. If you overuse a thesaurus, it can be confusing for your reader, and it will be evident if you're using just anomalous kind of words. Maybe some of these adjectives even on the list here, voguish, for example, I think could be more confusing than illustrative for some people. So keep that in mind. We're not just trying to sound smart. Okay, so we've brainstormed, we've created an outline, we've drafted, and then we've done some initial editing. Now we want to review our work with fresh eyes. Give it space. Don't just try and write the piece all at once. Get a first draft in to the point where you feel like you've included all of the material that you need to include. You've responded to each of these points in your outline, and then go for a walk, take a nap, wait, save it for the next day, right? Give it space so that you can read it with fresh eyes. Another method that I find helpful is to read aloud. If we're reading it aloud, it should be easy to read. If it has good flow, it should be easy to read. If we're encountering points where it's difficult to read aloud, maybe that's a section that we need to focus in on and address with some of these editing techniques that I discussed. This is also a good way to catch spelling errors, which I didn't mention during our editing portion, but you use a spell checker, right? And then finally, ask a friend if you are writing for the Red Star or at most publications, they are going to have somebody edit your piece. It is nice when you can work together with your editor. Here are a couple ways to do that, right? Your word processor should have a comments feature. So here's one comment that I got on a recent piece that I wrote for Red Star. The comment was, could we have an example of how this is done? It's a great comment. If this reader wants an example, I can imagine that other readers are going to want an example. So that's something that I included, chose to include to respond to this reader's comment. Also, suggestion mode is very useful. Again, can suggest some different wordings, can suggest adding some words. You can choose to accept these or not, but it gives you a great visual for how the piece might read differently if it's worded or put in a different manner. And publishing. If we're interested in publishing a piece, we should gather an idea of what to expect from the process. First, you should check the publisher's submission guidelines. Some publications might prefer a pitch over a completed piece. There could also be word limits or a style guide. Looking at other publications, other articles in the publication also provides a sense of the expected tone and style of the publication. which will make it more likely that your piece is accepted if it conforms to the standard tone and style of that publication. And don't be surprised or offended if your piece requires heavy editing prior to publication. See it as a learning experience. And some of this might just be stylistic. Some of the edits might just be to conform to the stylistic expectations of that publication. It might not be because you're a bad writer, but do be prepared to have additional feedback and maybe even cuts. So these are some of the things that you have to accept if you're publishing somewhere else. Now, I did just want to mention briefly, I'm hoping that people are attending this workshop, watching this video because they are interested in writing for the Rochester Red Star. One of our monthly features is Notes of the Month. This is essentially news coverage of ROC DSA's events. They are descriptive. And I think you could just think of this format: who, what, where, when, why. Just answer these questions. So we can provide a description of the event for our readers. It doesn't have to be anything too substantial. I have an example here from the Good Cause Eviction hearing. This was written by one of our members. It's 79 words. On August 14th, ROC DSA outnumbered landlords at the East District hearing for Good Cause Eviction, chaired by DSA endorsed council member Mary Lupian. DSA members spoke about the harm caused by the status quo of no-cause evictions, talking about how they contribute to the homelessness crisis, as well as personal stories of no-cause eviction and landlord abuse of tenants. Speakers also stressed the need to close the loopholes in the current legislation so that it protects all tenants. So this gives us an idea of when the event was held, who hosted the event, what the subject matter of the event is, and then also gives us a strong takeaway here that the need to close loopholes of the current legislation. That's something that we're fighting for as a chapter right now. It gives this relevance to the reader. Why does this matter? Okay. That's my presentation. Are there questions from the last slide here? Write for the Rochester Red Star. Here's a link for your submission. If you submit us an article, we do have an editorial team which will help review the article, provide commentary. We read from my advertisement here. We do provide coverage of local news, U.S. politics, and leftist theory. Red Star is interested in presenting a range of perspectives and amplifying voices throughout ROC DSA in our community. Send us your articles. Photo, essays, videos, and art are also welcome. As mentioned, we'll provide feedback and edit your piece.